Okay, so we are looking at this question on Dollar Batteries Limited. Right, we've been given information about the overheads, these indirect costs, and we've got additional budgeted information here. So the first part of the question is asking us, explain the three stages of overhead absorption. So stage one, that's where you do the overhead allocation and the overhead apportionment. Overhead allocation is just where you allocate the costs to the department, the relevant department. Overhead apportionment is all about sharing the overheads amongst all departments. All right. Like in the indirect materials, this 1 million, we have to share it amongst mixing, assembly, stores, and maintenance. Rent, the 750,000, must share it to mixing, assembly, stores, and maintenance. This information here is going to help us apportion those overheads. All right, that's why this information is given to us. After you've apportioned all the overheads, the next thing you need to do is you need to reapportion the overheads of the service departments. You need to reapportion them to the production departments. All right. After you reapportion the overheads from the service departments to the production departments, you get the total overheads in each department. Now, once you get the total overheads in each department, you need to get the overhead absorption rate, which is basically just the overhead cost per unit. Because all that we're trying to do here is want to find out our overhead cost per unit. Once we find our overhead cost per unit, then we can tabulate the total cost for each unit that we produce. So after you've got your overhead absorption rate, that's the final stage because now you've got your overhead cost per unit, and now you can be able to determine the total cost per unit for the goods that you produce. So the next question is saying, using the step down method for overhead reapportionment, determine the overhead absorption rates for the production departments. Right, so before we even reach to the overhead reapportionment part, first we need to apportion the overheads. Then when we come to the reapportionment part, that's when I'll explain what the step down method is all about. So the first thing we need to do here is first we need to share this 1 million for indirect materials. And we need to share it to mixing, assembly, stores, and maintenance. So we're going to come to this budgeted information to see what we can use to apportion the indirect materials. All right. We see which one is the most logical item we can use to apportion indirect materials. All right. There's a number of store requisitions, which I feel is the correct one to apportion the indirect materials. From our store requisitions, this is when you're requesting for materials at the factory. There's going to be direct materials and also the indirect materials, right? Number of staff really wouldn't be a good apportionment basis for indirect materials. Even area square meters, machine value, and these others, they wouldn't be logical. So we're going to use number of store requisitions to apportion this indirect, this 1 million for indirect materials to the other four departments. So let me just get this information here. Okay, so we're going to start with indirect materials. We're using number of stores requisitions. All right. So basically, how we're portioning these overheads, all right, like for them, when we start with the mixing department, all right, if you notice, if you add 3,500 plus 4,000 plus 1,000 plus 1,500, they give you 10,000. So we're going to make each of these as fractions, and we multiply those fractions by the 1 million to reapportion. All right. So let's start with indirect materials. So as you are doing your calculations, you have to state which item you're using for reapportionment. So for indirect materials, we're using number of store requisitions. All right. So we're going to start with the mixing department. So mixing department, we're going to say 3,500 over 10,000. Okay. 3,500. Let's get our calculators. Over 10,000 times 1 million. So this 1 million is this amount here, the one we're sharing out. So 3,500 divided by 10,000, that is 0.35. 0.35 times 1 million, 350,000. All right. So out of this 1,350,000 goes to mixing department. Oops. This is the 1 million. Ish, why is it refusing to come here? Okay, I'll make a table. Once we've done the tabulations, I'll make a table. All the answers we're getting, we're going to be putting there. So that 350,000 will come here under mixing. The next one is assembly department. So as for assembly, I'm going to say 4,000 over 10,000 times 1 million. So 4,000 divided by 10,000, that is 0.4. 0.4 times 1 million, that's 400,000. Right. So from the 1 million for indirect materials, 400,000 goes to assembly department. Colleagues, any questions before I move further? All that we're doing here is we are apportioning the overheads. All right. We are sharing this 1 million to these four departments. And the basis we're using for the reapportionment is number of store requisitions. All right. Any questions so far? Hello. Always in these type of questions, they're always going to give you the total charge for the overhead, and they always give you this budgeted information. If none of that is present, you won't be able to do anything. Yes. They're always so whatever way the question is structured, just always remember the most important information is first the total amount for the overheads and then this additional information. This additional information, as I said, is helping us in the apportionment and is also going to help us in the reapportionment. Yes. So if they are not given, especially if it's in the exam, please you raise your hand, even tell the invigilator there is missing information here. Okay, the invigilator will call the lecturer to say there is missing information. All right, so next is stores. So as you can see for stores, here it's 1,000. All right, so it's 1,000 over 10,000. All we're just doing is making these as fractions. If you want, you can even convert them into percentages. All right. Okay, so 1,000 over 10,000 multiplied by 1 million. 0.1 times 1 million, that is 100,000. So 100,000 goes to stores department. Then finally, maintenance department. So you say 1,500 over 10,000. So usually the tricky part about these questions is selecting the proper reapportionment base, right? So here, this is where you have to. There are some tables which will help you. They'll show you the suitable reapportionment basis, but usually you have to use the one which is making the most logical sense. Okay. So it's not standard that all the time indirect materials you always use this one, right? Sometimes maybe they might bring a better reapportionment base, and you can use that one. Then maintenance. So say maintenance. 1,500 divided by 10,000 times 1 million. That gives us 150,000. Yes, so we have apportioned these indirect materials successfully across all these 4 departments. Well, I have to also make a table so that I start putting the figures here, because you need to put all the figures which are here. Okay. But so far, any questions, colleagues, before we go to reapportion rent? Okay, next is rent. So remember, colleagues, the reason why we're doing all of this work is because we want to find our overhead cost per unit, which is called our overhead absorption rate. All right, this is why we are doing all of this. So for rent, we'll use area square meters. Okay, it looks like the most logical basis of reapportionment. All right. So line here, rent area square meters. So we start the process again. We're going to go to mixing department. All right. So rent, as you can see, the total square meters is 2,000 meters squared. 500 is rent. 1,000 not rent. 500 goes to mixing. 1,000 assembly, stores 250, and maintenance 250. So for mixing, we're going to say 500 over 2,000. Now also, I need to notice, colleagues, sometimes they won't give you these totals here. If they are not given the totals, you find the total yourself. You add these and then you make each of them as a fraction. Okay. So 500 over 2000 times 500 over 2000 times the rent is the total is 750,000. So colleagues, what are we getting with our calculators? Remember, this when I talk a lot, my mouth gets dry, so I need at least people to also chime in, okay, so that we make life easy. So what are we getting when we do 500 over 2000 times 750,000? Nobody. No one came with a calculator. Remember, it's good in case maybe I make a mistake, I type in the wrong figure. We need at least someone to cross check to see that we are putting the accurate figures. So those who are copying and pasting, they don't put a wrong figure. So 500 divided by 2000, 0.25 times 750,000, we get 187,500. All right, that goes to mixing, assembly, 1,000, okay, out of 2,000, 1,000 over 2,000 times 750,000. And that should be half of 750. So 5 times 750,000, 375,000. Stores, I remember it was 250. Okay. Remember, all this information is coming here on the additional budgeted information. Okay, so stores 250 and maintenance 250. And then say 250 over 2,000 times 750,000. Even for maintenance, 250 over 2,000 times 750. All right, let's see, what do we get? 250 over 2,000 times 750,000. That's 93,750. So yes, both of them get 93,750. 93,750. Okay, and what you should also notice is when you add all these amounts, they're going to give you the total, which is 750,000. Yes, colleagues, any questions? Okay, this in here, one area square meters, so we can see the total here. This total, that's where it's coming from. And if the total is not given, it's for you to get the total and then make each of them as a fraction of the total. 750 is here. This is the charge for rent. Because remember, this 750, you have split it to mixing, assembly, stores, and maintenance. So we are sharing it amongst each department. Yes. So when you hear apportionment, it just means we're just sharing the overhead across each department. Yes. So these are the questions in the exam. I think the long questions you do them last. Yeah. The short questions you do them first so that you get your points. Then these ones you do them last. Okay. Because if you start with this one and it takes you 1 hour 30 minutes, and they've said answer five and you have just answered one, the outcome will be bad. Next is electricity 500,000. So we see what can we apportion our electricity with. All right, here we've got kilowatt hours consumed. That's the most logical one. So as you can see, the total is 413, so it's going to be the denominator. And then each of these are going to be a fraction of 413. So we're going to start with, so electricity it's 500,000. Then it's, what do you call this? Oh, kilowatt hours consumed. All right, so we start with electricity. So we start with the mixing department. It's 138 over 413. Now, colleagues, I need someone to also help me calculate so we move fast, because we're going to spend another 2 hours still solving this question. So unless if there's someone who else has got a calculator, we calculate together. So I'm just hearing answers. 138 over 413 times 500,000. That's for mixing department. Then for assembly, it's going to be 225 over 413 times 500,000. Stores, 25 over 413. So stores and maintenance, at least good things are the same. 25 over 413 times 500,000. Maintenance, 25 over 413. Okay. Colleagues, has someone got some answers for these ones on top? 138 over 413 times 500,000. This for assembly, stores, and maintenance. Over. Yes. Maybe I've typed it as a message. Someone raised their hand. 150. 16. Okay, 167. 70, right? There are some decimal places. So to make life easy, colleagues, we just round off to whole numbers, okay? We just round off to whole numbers. All right. What about for assembly? And about assembly? Oh, I forgot. I've also got this information here. Yes. Yes. Forgot. 272. Okay. 27 272. Yes. I also got a 272 there. 272 397. Right? Okay. For stores, you're supposed to get 300,000. This is 30,266. Then for maintenance, 30,266. Okay, I believe we've now understood the concept. We can just go through this table, right? Machine depreciation, we used the value of machinery. So this 250,000, we're splitting it amongst these four departments, mixing, you get 100. This is 11,000, 112,500. Then here, this is 87,500 for assembly, stores 22,500, maintenance 27,500. Indirect indirect labor, we used indirect labor hours. We using the same process. Okay, we were splitting this 826,000 amongst all the departments. So mixing gets 206,500, assembly 137,667.7, stores 165,200, maintenance, this is 316,633.3. Once you have apportioned all of these, the next thing you do is you get the total. You add up mixing department, you add up all of these, you get 1,423,517. Assembly, you get 1,592,564. Stores, 500, 511,716. Maintenance, you add 798,150. So we can say the first stage has been done. We've apportioned all the costs. Any questions, colleagues? So far, any questions? So after you do these calculations here, this is what we're calculating. You're supposed to make a table like this, and you have to It's not compulsory that you put your basis of apportionment, but for studying purposes, you put your basis of apportionment. Then you share out each of the overheads. So if there are no questions, we can end here. Then when we meet next time, we're going to look at the step-down method of reapportionment. The step-down method of reapportionment, the first thing you want to do is before you reapportion these service departments, right? You're going to say which service department supports the other more. All right. Between stores and maintenance, you're going to find out which service department supports the other more. Whichever service department supports the other more, all right, is the one that's going to be reapportioned first.